Okay, so in part two, I want to look at how we know when we're getting stressed and maybe how come we're getting stressed. So one of the most important things to do in any difficult circumstance is to be tuned in to yourself physically. Because the one way that we know we're stressed is our body will tell us if we're listening. So everybody has their own kind of signature in terms of stress. When I was in college, a long time ago, I used to get really painful jaw. I would sometimes wake in the morning with literally almost like a lockjaw because I was grinding my teeth and holding tension in my face sometimes. And sometimes when I'm at work, my shoulders come up, and at the end of the day, I have to kind of physically unwind that stress. So our bodies are very good at telling us when we're stressed, and everybody has their own. Some people it's their heart rate will be pounding, some people it's a knot in their stomach, some people hold their breath. And something that is more kind of familiar recently in the last maybe year or two, a lot of clients have reported this kind of crushing or a very heavy sensation on their chest. So like, this pressure, like it's a physical pressure. So like I was saying in the first part, we feel stress physically in our bodies as well as emotionally and as well as mentally. So if we tune in and listen to our bodies, it will direct us and tell us. So if you tune in and get to know what's your own particular sign, that is adrenaline at work. And like I was saying there, the fight or flight system will activate to keep us safe, and it activates by flooding us with a hormone called adrenaline, because it's thinking, primitive brain is like, back in Neanderthal times where it's a saber-toothed tiger and it thinks you have to run. So you're flooded with adrenaline to physically fight. But if you're sitting thinking about your business and how you're going to pay rent next month, there's nothing to physically fight, yet you're full of adrenaline. And that can leave you with lots of uncomfortable sensations. But if you pay attention and tune into those, that can be like, it's kind of like a little warning sign, there's something up, and it's important when that happens not to ignore it, to pay attention, to tune in, to listen and respect. It's kind of like if you had a temperature, that's your body's way of telling you there's something physically wrong, and you wouldn't ignore that. So this is our physical sensations are the same as a temperature. It's the body telling us that there's something up that we need to pay attention to. Okay, so one of the ways that we do that, we pay attention to our bodies, is we tune in on a regular basis. So I have a very active Instagram account, The Mind Gym, and over there I have a little highlight about kettle breathing. So what I've asked people to do is every time you turn on the kettle, that you use that as a time to kind of stop, check in, ground yourself, and just take 30 seconds and say, how am I doing? And in today's climate where everything is so uncertain and our heads are a bit fried, we're inclined to tune out and maybe distract and avoid and not think about things, where it is really important to actually pay attention to, give yourself that time that you need to tune in and go exactly, okay, what is really going on, rather than ignoring it. It's like if you've, a toddler wailing and you ignore them, they will just wail louder. And it's the same. Our body will ramp up. If it's filling us with adrenaline and we're not paying attention, the primitive brain will go, oh, hang on a second, they're not listening. And it will flood you with more and more adrenaline to deal with this threat. And you will just feel worse and worse instead of stopping, tuning in and doing something obstructive to address whatever it is that's going on. So grounding yourself over the course of the day is really important. So you can do that when you're sitting, put your 2 feet on the floor, your back straight, put your hand on your lower stomach, and as you breathe in, you're trying to push out your hand. So you just breathe in slowly and trying to get your hand to rise, and then breathe out. Again, nice and slow. And there's lots of people online talking about numbers and counting with breathing. I like to just keep it really simple and just in slow and deep, and then out slow and deep. So every time you go to turn on the kettle, or every time you sit down maybe with your 3 meals, if you ground yourself and physically tune in, you'll be doing yourself a huge favor in terms of managing stress. Another thing to be aware of is when we are full of adrenaline, so when we are stressed and anxious, It takes about 20 minutes for that hormone to get burnt off. So if you notice, oh God, I'm anxious or nervous, and a really useful tip can be to do something, a physical exercise of some sort. Hoover the house, cut the grass, pull out the hot press, do something, 20 minutes yoga. There's loads of stuff free and online at the moment. So be aware that addressing and isolating the reason that you're stressed, that in itself won't just get rid of it. It takes time for the hormones to work their way out of the body. So when we are anxious and stressed and under pressure and feeling bad about things, the part of the brain that's engaged, like I was saying, is the primitive part of the brain. It takes very small chunks of information and it bases everything on them. What we're trying to do is step back. So the primitive part of the brain might react to COVID by going, this is a crisis, it's a disaster, there's nothing anyone can do, we're all in trouble. Whereas the rational part of the brain will stop and take in all the different accounts going, yes, this is a very difficult time, but there are resources there is supports out there, everybody is in the same boat, we're all in this together. So it will see a much bigger picture. So that's what we're trying to broaden our perspective by stopping and calming down and engaging the rational part of the brain. A great way to do that is to ask questions. And on the sheet that I will have linked, I will give that to Jenny and Mark and they'll put it into this presentation. There's questions under each of the thinking styles that will help, first of all, address that thinking style, but also help you engage the rational part of the brain, which then sends a message back, oh, hang on a second, they're dealing with this, we can stop pumping them full of adrenaline. So it's calming. By doing something constructive, you're calming down your stress response. You're helping yourself to come out of fight or flight mode. An important thing to consider with fight or flight is that there is a third aspect, which is freeze. That's another primitive response, and that can happen in a trauma where there's maybe a row and somebody freezes up and they don't move, and people say, why didn't you run away or why didn't you move? That's a primitive response, and these are subconscious. We're not in control of those. A freeze response in the COVID-19 business world might be to go, I can't think about this, I'm just going to ignore it, to distract, avoid, kind of bury your head in the sand, and that's very tempting. I'm a procrastinator, I can put my hand up for that. So I really understand if there's people out there watching this going, it's too much, I can't deal with it. But that's just putting things off. It's putting them on the long finger, and it's building up this sense of not being in control. It's just adding stress on top of an already stressful situation. So as much as you can, the more you deal with the situations, the more you reach out and get help and ask questions and get the resources, the better you will feel, the more constructive that will be. Another aspect that's really important is lifestyle. So outside of work, outside of your day job, generally, how do you treat yourself? Do you exercise regularly? Do you eat good and nourishing food? And at the moment, I think everybody is struggling because our routines are all shot. Like we're up late at night, or we don't have to be up early in the morning if we're not working. So it's very hard to maintain a healthy lifestyle. But when we're stressed, it is really important to stick to that as much as we can. If you're anxious, if you're inclined to be panicky, if you're having a knot in your stomach a lot of the time, that could be a sign there's a lot of adrenaline in your system. And if you're drinking lots of coffee, which is a stimulant, on top of that, you could be just making that worse. So think about caffeine intake. If you are stressed at the moment, no more than 2 to 3 cups a day. And I love my morning coffee. So I'm not saying don't drink it, but maybe certainly not after 2 o'clock and not more than 3 cups. If you can swap it out for decaf or herbal tea or just water. Another thing is lots and lots of water is really important now. We're all, big house plants with emotions, as the meme says, but we need our brains, particularly when we're under pressure, we need lots and lots of water. 2 to 3 pints a day, if not more, is really important. Good nourishing food, healthy, as little processed as possible. So those aspects are really, really important. Sleep is really crucial. Sleep is the foundation thing on which everything else sits. So the better your sleep is, and lots of people are reporting really weird dreams at the moment because our dreams is how we process things that we can't make sense of during the day. People are reporting broken sleep because we're going to bed anxious. Maybe if we're not dealing with stuff during the day, it's not gone, it doesn't disappear because we don't think about it. It will surface during the night, it will disrupt our sleep. So sleep is something that I would like everyone to think about, and I have some really good sheets on sleep hygiene and worry time that I will look at in other sheets in the next section. Something that's really important to think about is, am I doing things that are maintaining stress? Like, am I avoiding things? Am I focusing on the negative? Am I scrolling on my phone endlessly all day? Am I constantly watching news reports? There's a lot of frightening information out there at the moment, and if that stuff is stressing you out, it's not a good idea to do it. If you're eating unhealthily, if you're drinking a bottle of wine every night, not helpful. So have a think about, is there habits that I'm engaging in at the moment that while they give me short-term relief, in the long term, they're just putting off dealing with stuff and they're not helping, and that adds to the sense of feeling out of control. Okay, so in part 2 there, important to know when we're stressed, our body will tell us, and then important to know why we're stressed. What is it? Tune in, identify the thought, and work out what is it that's going on. Don't avoid, don't ignore. And then thirdly, think about your lifestyle. Are you supporting and nourishing yourself as best you can in these really stressful circumstances?